be able to help me decipher this one better, but what are misconceptions in society that you feel are the biggest issues we face as society as a whole, and how would you approach resolving them and combating their effects?
Yeah, so my interpretation of this was that it's the misconceptions that large parts of society hold that somehow has a negative effect overall. So that's the way I interpreted the question.
Okay.
And I think you had one, right? That you started with earlier?
As an answer to this?
I think so, didn't you?
All right, I'm thinking of two things. So more in terms of physical reality and the outside world, limitation. So everything is limited, and I'm thinking of energy in particular. Like the energy sources we're using here on planet Earth are pretty limiting, and they destroy the planet, and it's just we're approaching that in the completely wrong fashion. Thankfully, there's things like solar energy coming out, and it's easier and cheaper to produce it these days, so things like that are more of a solution. And there's a bunch of free energy stuff coming out too, which is going to help shift from limitation to abundance. So I think that limitation's a big problem in terms of energy, because energy is the fundamental part of that.
Well, I think what you're leaving out there is solar is getting cheaper now, but it's because we've never invested in it, because of the vested powers
in oil and fossil
and
fuels.
government that are tied into it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's why
it
it's
would be
all
cheap.
suppressed. Yeah.
And the good news is they're finally getting some of the cost out of solar, and so it's becoming a lot more cost feasible.
And I saw a meme, sorry to interrupt, I saw a meme that it has the picture of the sun compared to the earth, and it says, why can't this, pointing to the sun, power this, pointing to the tiny speck of earth?
That's funny.
It's like, it puts things into perspective.
Have you guys seen that? It's like a 15-20 minute long video. It's almost like an advertisement too, of this company, and they designed this it's like a hexagonal little plastic piece, but it's like little solar panels, and pretty much their idea for it was to use it for like the roadways.
Oh, yeah.
And for people's driveways, and in the winter throw off so much heat, and the roads would be tapered, obviously, so the snow would melt on contact, saving the state money on plowing and salting and stuff. And at night, if like a tree fell down on contact, it would light up, so you'd be able to see, or if an animal was crossing.
Oh yeah, I've seen those
And
Animal Crossing ones.
yeah.
That's brilliant.
And then they would have, I guess, like giant cables that run along either side of it, and pretty much you're just making a network of, electricity for everybody. And think about how much that would produce. Even if you took one major highway and you did that,
Or you can also employ kinetic energy with that.
Yeah.
There's so many solutions, and there's so much
Power your
potential.
cars off that and stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, I can see solar and nuclear, for sure, one of them is going to be the wave of the future as far as avoiding greenhouse gases and producing massive amounts of power. I mean, it just doesn't.
Nuclear is kind of sketchy, though, because you got all the...
It is and it isn't. I mean, there is waste, and I get that. And the waste, I mean, first of all, there's a temporary solution, and then when we figure out a better solution in the future, we can take care of it then. I know that's sort of short-sighted, but honestly, the amount of spent fuel rods is not the end of the world. But then, I mean, the other thing I think that maybe you're pointing out is, yes, I mean, I think there needs to be disaster plans in place, even for unforeseen disasters, such as like the huge tsunami in Japan. Yeah, they obviously weren't quite as prepared for that.
Or going into the taboos, created disasters to leak radiation purposefully.
I think that might be a different topic.
Yeah, just diving in somewhere else.
So, if I may go next, if we're ready to move on. Misconceptions. I mean, a couple things that I thought of tend to be related to, general health and wellness. One is the idea that a lot of, or many people think that, and especially common in women, it seems, that if you're weightlifting, that you're suddenly going to become humongous and jacked and look like fitness models on TV. And I think that's like a very, very common misconception. I mean, it's actually, and I think this is a good point, is that, it's actually offensive to people that do that for a living and try to and put so much time and effort and all of the work that goes into actually looking like that. To think you can do that by accident is almost offensive. I mean, because it's so hard to get to that point. If you want to be a humongous jacked up bodybuilder, it's not something that you can just do, especially with steroids. But
well, it's steroids and testosterone because
Right.
women simply don't have the testosterone.
They have like a 10th.
Yeah, they don't have the profile to be able to pack on slabs of muscle like that.
Right.
So unless they're synthetically getting testosterone and eating like a horse, women aren't going to pack on muscle like
Right.
that. And even so, how many big guys do you see around?
yeah, no,
Not
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 the
a lot.
ones that make you think like he's
Not a
on
lot.
something.
And if it's that hard for guys with their testosterone profiles, even though that's being really countered by the diet,
I was
it's really
gonna say,
affecting
you have to take
testosterone
that.
levels to begin with, but women just don't have the testosterone for it. And then because of that, they steer away from lifting, which is actually a very empowering and the best thing you can do health-wise, resistance training. And they throw that aside in favor of long-distance running and
Or classes.
or spin classes and things like that. And it's been proven by a lot of experts recently that long-distance running is not in any shape or form good for you. It's going
not as good for you, right?
no, it's bad for you. Like in terms of severely decreasing your thyroid hormones, in terms of the cortisol levels, in terms of the pattern overload because you're doing the same movement thousands and thousands of times, in terms of the impact on your knees and things like that. There's a lot of factors, and it downregulates your metabolism, so it actually makes you fatter. That's why people who run long distances have to run further and further to burn the same amount of calories. So it's
Right, but just to
a
clarify
vicious
what that
cycle.
means, I mean, you could also say if you look at every marathon runner ever, there's not a single fat one. So it's not that running by
But-
itself.
But a lot of them are like sarcoplasmically obese, like that skinny fat.
And then that doesn't also determine health.
Oh no,
Yeah,
no,
that-
I
I mean,
mean,
there's so many marathoners who just drop dead of heart attacks.
No, I know.
You're like,
Yeah.
aren't you supposed to be tip-top shape?
Yeah,
But also
marathon
their
runners
their
not.
body fat percentage isn't that low if you look at marathon runners.
Yeah,
That's why
Very-
they got bitch tits.
Yeah, look at marathon runners compared to sprinters.
Yeah.
Sprinters are
Well,
are lean.
Yoked.
for sure.
Yeah, and they're lean. Marathon runners are typically not lean. They're skinny, yes, but not lean.
So meaning like they're
Lean
they
is
don't have a lot
body
of
fat
muscle,
percent.
right? Yeah, I mean,
They don't
Yeah.
have a lot of muscle. Yeah,
So they consume it all running.
those long distances.
yeah, because when you run long distances, like the muscle is wasted because it's
Yeah.
not needed.
I mean, if you
Well-
notice, you've never seen a healthy-looking professional marathoner.
And the thing is, too, it's the whole, before they do their marathons, they do their carb loading, and they're so hooked on carbs that they're not even using, like, their muscle
Yeah,
glycogen.
That's
and
another thing.
there are other stores that they could be using. You could be healthy and run these distances, per se.
So can you go more into that? Because I don't actually know what you mean by that. Like the carbs and the glycogen, and because I don't know what you mean.
Okay, now we're just going to be starting to get to something.
All right,
We
this,
do a
this
whole
would be
episode
time to
on
give a
it.
brief overview, only because I really just don't know what you mean by like what does the carbs have to do with
Okay,
glycogen?
so marathoners, especially people who doing like your Ironmans and more, I mean 32 or 26 point, yeah, that's long, but people who are doing a little more than that, or
Yeah.
unless they're seriously focused about it, a couple days prior they won't really eat carbs until like the day before, and they're just gonna carb, like as many carbs as they
Okay.
can.
Yep.
Because carbs turn into glycogen.
Your muscle
Yep.
glycogen.
Oh, okay.
Yep, it gets stored. Well, it's going to get stored in your liver first, and then it'll get shifted over. And the thing with that is, that's not even really preferred. Like,
And
you're
so,
just
like,
not really giving your body the chance to revert to this other pathway that it could use, because instead it's going to crash and it's going to say, oh shit, I need something that's more readily available. I'm going to break this muscle down. And that's where you start getting into,
I got you. Interesting.
and that's why like ketogenic diets are starting to become way more popular amongst your more endurance athlete group. I mean, even just athletes in general.
Yeah.
I mean, with any polar focus is, there's going to be minerals and vitamins you might miss out on. But as long as you get the blood work done, I mean, you can really have most any diet and still be relatively healthy as long as you say, hey, this is high, I need to implement this, or I need to take this out. I mean, really, that's the only way to fine-tune anybody's diet is to get the blood work done every so often and say, hey, this is what I'm missing, let's add this in, or what can I do to bring these levels up?
And a related point, Keeper, the carb backloading guy, he trains a lot of long-distance athletes, and he has them on a ketogenic type of diet.
Mm-hmm.
And because they become fat adapted, they can burn fat and use fat metabolically. He has them load up on carbs the night before, and they're able to use any type of fuel, any and every type of fuel during the session.
Fat.
So it makes the body more dynamic.
Yeah, your fat stores are there as a last resort.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why you store fat. That's why you need it. So if that's not really a last resort kind of instance when you're running, so your body's going to take the more readily available if your diet isn't focused on fat as a primary fuel source.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone's like, oh, your brain needs glucose and this, and the only way you can get that is carbs.
So eat tons of pasta.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Keep that inflammation up too.
Leaky gut.
All right, that was a nice little tangent.
Yeah.
Any other misconceptions?
Ooh, I didn't. You go though. You know.
I was going to talk about fear because that ties into the.
You were or you are doing?
So I'll talk about it. About how everyone is in the paradigm of fear. Like there's two motivating forces. John Lennon talked about this a lot. That you're either motivated by fear or love. And a lot of society today and a lot of people are motivated by fear and not love. And a lot of institutions are reflections of that. You got religion that it's believe this or go to fucking hell. You know, school. If you don't do this, you're not gonna pass.
You'll be a failure in life.
Yeah. Like everything is based on fear instead of love. So a lot of people are motivated by fear instead of love. And because of that, going back to the first question, things like anxieties and stress are so prevalent because those are byproducts of fear.
No, I will say, just if we haven't already alienated all of our religious followers yet, that you could also argue that, you know, in many religions, love is also a central part of it, and it sort of depends on how you approach it, right? I mean, the love for Jesus, for example, is a big part of Christianity, that sort of thing.
But that's why that I say that religions are distortions of truth for purposes of control. So they take that truth of love and they twist it to control people.
You have to love
Jesus. So in essence, yeah, whatever force is a loving force of the universe, in my opinion, and Jesus would be a loving character if he existed. But they take that and they say, believe in him or you're going to hell. So they take it and twist it to that fear-based paradigm. And that's how they trick people.
And
So I think everyone
who
has
do
their
not
own.
believe in it.
Oh, yeah. And that's all fear-based.
Look at their history.
Yeah,
It's
well,
all
it's
about
That's very loving.
Yeah. Or I fear those that are different from me. So
Yes.
then that provokes me to attack them.
So it's all about interpretation, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, they preach, you know, acceptance and understanding and look at all
Stand
this,
your ground. This is America.
you know, who's been fighting gay rights for so long, and,
I know.
you know, they convert people over to their way, and you have to be like us, this and that. That's not very understanding and accepting, like.
That's why.
But then are we now being not understanding and unaccepting by trying to convert people to believe that religion is bad?
I would never say religion is bad. I'd say organized religion is bad. You can pray however way you want, meditate. You know, it doesn't have to be an actual entity that you believe in. You can believe in a higher energy source, a higher supreme, whatever you do.
Salt chicken.
Exactly. I'm not saying religion is bad. I'm saying organized. I can jump on that. Organized religion, the way they have gone about things, yes.
Yep. And
Should be more ideals.
you just
Beliefs.
you have to live and let live. You can't impose your beliefs upon other
Right.
people, and you can't cause harm to other people or yourself. That's where the line is. I don't like drawing lines, but it's a good guideline. Just let it be.
And then you said you had a misconception you wanted to bring up?
Oh yeah. Mine is believing that everything the government says and publishes as true. Really, people? Come on now.
Or the media.
Yeah.
Period.
You think these people, just because they're in a position of power, are like some separate entity who's not fallible in any way, but at the same time, they're just influenced by money as we are, power.
So how do you combat its effects?
We gotta take it back.
Or just don't watch it.
Oh,
Don't
for
engage
media,
in it.
yeah, for media, but
Government.
for government and stuff, you have to empower yourself. You have to gain knowledge for yourself. You know, you can't just take this and it goes back to what we were talking about, last week. These victim mentalities. People just accept it for what it is and like, oh, there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
Pick up a fucking book, and then you'll start seeing like, oh, this isn't what they said. And you start thinking.
Yeah, people give their power away to authority so easily. They're like, oh, I'm little old me, and they're that person, that political figure on the screen, so they must be more important, and they must know what they're doing more than little victim me. And people need to step into their power and be like, my opinion is just as valid as these people on the fake TV screen, because they're just puppets anyway.
And I always think sort of the same way, is that it's just so funny how it's like, oh my goodness, look at this guy, that's crazy. And if you think about it, I'm a person, and the President of Obama is a person. Like
Unless
everyone's
he's a
person. We're all just-
shape-shifting reptilian.
Right. We're all just people.
Oh, man.
It is a Steve Perotto solo podcast.
We should have his own. He's crazy. But that's why I don't watch the news. It's so fear-based. They try to keep everybody afraid from thinking about what things that they should think about. Real problems like, oh, ISIS this week, and next week it'll be measles or some other
The next
Ebola is coming
boogeyman.
back. Yeah,
Oh, it's
and
the
then it'll be back to ISIS.
American Sniper.
Oh,
Saw that at the gym today.
So it diverts people from working on themselves. That's the thing. So no one even has the opportunity to master themselves if they're completely distracted and engaged. And change only starts with the man in the mirror.
Who's that?
Michael.
Yeah.
Anything else to add on this, or should we move on to the next?
I think.